this project has been a benevolence project from the beginning. It's something my wife and I just threw some money into because it was a desire of ours. The concept's pretty simple. Here, I'll just show you. I've only got 6 minutes, so bear her. This is my wife. She is an emerging fine artist. I was asked what her art form was, and it's mostly like an impressionistic form that's more modern. And I'm a tech guy, so I have a tech business in town. And I mention that because if you're a really great design artist, I might want to hire you if you're fast and you're really good. So talk to me after. So we got inspired to do this project, self-funded, based on 2 trips we took. We went to Paris and we went to the West Bank of Israel. And in Paris, I was enamored with just the infinitude of inspirational components and elements. And I thought, man, Kansas City could really use a boost in just being inspired. And then we went to the West Bank, and we saw just how little art exists in the West Bank, and actually in many ways in the Muslim world, though I'm not trying to isolate them out too much. But basically, people's social, religious views affect whether they allow art into their culture. And I felt like Kansas City was somewhere in between those two. I felt like, especially in renewal areas of Kansas City, it was almost like being in the West Bank as far as art was concerned. And I feel like we can change that. So we built what I call a mobile studio. It's a glorified one. I welded this together in my garage. And there's 2 of them. It's kind of a stand that's a steel structure. And then we bought a bunch of art supplies and got some artist grade paper, or better than average paper, and gave people a topic. A lot of the topics were things like hope, joy, freedom, what your dream is, and then just turned people loose to do art. So right here we're actually in front of the VOIX Art Center, which is where we normally did the project last year. This year we're working on the urban core more. So these were some of our goals. I'm going to skip through them, but basically help people do more art and identify good artists, maybe younger artists. We wanted to make it a collaborative. So these are some examples of some of the fairly decent pieces that the people off the street submitted. This is actually a piece from Colby Smith, which is kind of cheating because he's actually a mid-career plus artist who has a big studio in town, but he happened to come by, so we took it. But we basically said, okay, we're going to get all these pieces of art from people off the street, and then we're going to turn them into a collaborative piece that's decent, and then we'll try to do a really good art show that supports, I'd say, emerging and mid-career artists. And then we said, we kind of need some money to go with this. So, grant funding has been a challenge. I'm new to that whole business of acquiring grant funding, and I've done several grant proposals this year to support what we're trying to do. But I've also been thinking more recently in terms of what I could do from just a for-profit business standpoint. So this is kind of my map of how I think it could all work together. We would also include, since we're capturing video of all these people who are doing art and contributing art, we would interview them, and we did this last year, so we have all these components for last year's, and turn it into a video art form that could be projected in public places and perhaps have just a very small amount of advertising associated with it. So, people would see maybe the collaborative piece, and then they would also hear from the people who contributed to the collaborative, and there would be some artistic art and video elements associated with that, or the video itself would be artistically created. And then we would also sell just a little bit of advertising, a tasteful amount of advertising to go with that, projected in maybe rough areas of town where some beauty could be served, and then maybe acquire some advertising dollars. So that's something we're working on. We've got 2 videos towards that goal. One of them is more about my wife, and the other is more about what we've done here in this project. So some of our competitors are other fine artists, etc. However, I would encourage all of you, if you're an artist and you're looking for ways to attract attention to your art or make for a better show, that you might consider doing a collaborative art form in addition to your art style if you have the time and it doesn't encroach upon your art goals, your particular calling. Let's see, again, some of the unique elements. This is just showing you like one night in like an hour and a half how many people contributed. So each one of these squares represents a person who actually did art that night. And usually for every one person who submitted a piece of art, we had 3 to 10 people who stopped by and were interested, or maybe their parents were there as well. So then these pieces were then combined to form a collaborative piece. And so this is an example of one of the collaborative pieces here. This was the topic of hope. And so this person in the middle actually won because we also incorporated prizes to motivate people to come so they would get art supplies if they had the best piece that month. And that's the combination there for that particular month's collaboration. I'm going to skip this since I don't have much time.
My dream is probably for there to be world peace. So many wars take place and so much suffering for animals and humans. The most likely what will happen out of this will probably be that one day there will be such a great war that it will probably destroy the world. So what I am thinking is there is a possibility that the human race has hope. And then it also, it's just a blob of colors showing the endless possibility for what will happen ahead.
Okay, so this was an interview. I'm sorry I'm moving so fast, but so this is people at the booth over here contributing to the topic of the month, which was your dream. And this is an interview which we did for each person. So each person had to come and sign a waiver when they did art saying that they would be okay with being interviewed. And so we interviewed her on her dream and why she did this. So we have interviews of everyone who came and actually submitted a piece of art. Okay, so we're actually doing a show in August and September at the VOIX. She's been nice enough to let us have her basement area. And that's going to be in combination with 4 or 5 artists who contributed. So they'll be showing their art. And we'll also be showing this VILLE collaborative. VILLE, just so you know, means Voice of the City. We use V2V for short because most people can't say VILLE. Colby Smith also has greatly contributed. I don't know if I should jump right to the how can you help section or if I've gone way over time. But I wanted to bring up a couple other things. My wife and I are also starting a co-working space here in town that will offer for design artists, traditional art form, and media makers, and maybe some tech people as well, an affordable space for their office and for collaborations. So if you're interested in something like that, that's something you could do to help us. If you're a design artist, let me know, because I might be able to hire you for some projects for my business. If you would like to contribute to doing V2V, the mobile studios thing that I was just talking about, in the urban core, we would be thrilled to have you come and mentor people in art and help identify those emerging artists that should be found. And then, if you wouldn't mind, in August and September on First Fridays, just come down to the basement and see our show. We'd just be really thankful for your presence. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And so now, guys, we'll open up to questions. And I guess I'll start with the first one. How can this arts community in this room start to help you?
Well, come to our show. I kind of already jumped the gun, I think, in answering the questions. I can put that back up. But just come to our show at the VOIX First Fridays. If you would like to also help us do this on the street, we are still doing it. Funding has been a challenge. I got tired of personally just pouring out cash for art supplies, so that's why we've been trying to come up with some more creative ways to fund things. but it is such a joy to do it, and it only takes 3 or 4 hours to have a lot of fun, and tons of people show up because, you know, they get to do free art and they get to be interviewed. It's amazing. I wouldn't do it, but everyone seems to want to do it.
Have you thought about sponsorship for like art supplies?
I have, and we did get a little bit of sponsorship from VILLE, but we're talking about like $100 or $200. So, anyway.
I don't know if you need this or not. Oh, yeah.
Robert, I admire your ambition and your energy and your passion for what you're doing. As a comment on your funding challenges, as someone who talks a lot to artists about funding and to arts organizations about funding, my analysis of your current situation is your business model actually mixes several different revenue streams are kind of at odds with each other. You know, typically grants, especially arts grants, don't go to for-profit organizations. And you have, you know, a for-profit dimension to what you're trying to do. You've got advertising in there as a source of potential revenue, which again is something that for most arts funders, they're going to have real questions about that. You know, there's sort of elements, you know, what I hear you talking about is something that's really a community engagement project. And something that really is participatory and that helps people, and sort of average people, participate in arts activities.
Yeah.
But that's a dimension of activity that most fine artists are well beyond, unless they are the kind of an artist who is especially interested in community engagement work, in which case they're probably doing a much more sophisticated version of community and participatory engagement. So you've got an awful lot going on in there,
You're right.
as you admitted. And I think that until you get a little bit more realistic about that and focus on something that is a little bit more practical and that maybe doesn't include affecting world peace as an end goal, you're gonna.
Well, you know, we do our little.
We all hope that what we're doing contributes to world peace. Very few of us would put it down as one of our immediate goals for our activities.
Molly's going to come talk about her world anger goals
Right.
here.
Yeah.
So, my feedback is you need to get a little bit more sophisticated about what you're trying to do, a little bit clearer about that,
Okay.
and not try to be everything to everybody.
Yeah.
Because when you try to be everything to everybody, you end up being nothing to anybody.
Right.
And people won't get involved with you.
So you're right, and this is what I will say has been positive about what we've done, even if it has been, you know, in some ways seemingly misguided or just too, I guess, that disjoint in its directions or whatever. We did attract 1,000 people or more who were interested in art who wouldn't have been. And they will probably, a percentage of them will probably come to my wife's art show. So we have attracted attention for traditional fine art, which is good. And I think we could grow this over time, and it would actually be good. The second thing is that I feel like that sort of public engagement element is an extremely essential thing that needs to be invested in and materialized, because I mean, until I had my eyes open at the Museum d'Orsay in Paris and realized how much I did not know and how much I was missing, how naive I was, I assumed, actually, you know, when somebody said they paid $1,000 or $5,000 for a piece of art, I thought they were crazy. but now I get it a little bit more. And we have to help the younger generation, especially in this country, maybe the millennials, identify with art so that their first use of discretionary funds is not to buy an iPhone. It's to buy, hopefully, a beautiful art piece, or something more than just the next tech product that comes out. So I feel like we've done a little bit in that direction, or at least we've learned something about what can be done in that direction. And so I encourage all of you to be creative in the same way. Maybe you can refine your plan for how this is done more than we have. And this is iteration 1 or 2 for us. So there's hope. So anyway. Any other questions?
Yes, got it.
Incredible model, and I think it's incredibly generous and important to give access to everyone about engaging art. The next is the responsibility to it. And I would suggest that you spend or find access to some curators, other arts professionals, and people to help refine and define how you refer and are defining art yourself. So beyond a certain level of understanding and comprehension, it achieves a level of respect and education about what the 5,000, and now we're talking about $500,000 works of art, what makes art valuable and what separates something that might look like a Joan Mitchell and what Joan Mitchell was doing. Because the next most important step is not only access to crafting and giving yourself permission to draw or write letters or whatever, but know how to use language in a poetic way, in an intentionally unique and creative way. And all that has to be part of whoever's part of your group defining this and creating it. Bring someone that can really give that kind of perspective and additional definition. So when you put out your information, whether it's read on the street level or at the museum, people understand that you clearly understand what you're talking about and how you're identifying it. And just with simple conversations, and I'd be willing to help you at the beginning. So not only are you're on the right path to getting to these proverbial answers, is how do we take artists who you see talent in and support them and build up the pyramid of success for them in a reasonable, responsible, honest, respectful way.
Awesome.
Okay.
I love your help.
Sure.
Any more questions?
Hi. Yeah, like our friend here said, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. It was Bob? Paul. As Paul said, you got these disparate kind of channels going, and I don't know anything about fine art, but I do know about the urban core, and I know a lot about it. And I think what you're doing is really important. I just know that it takes a lot of money and a lot of energy to do it. I don't know. I did in years past, but I just remember. I don't know. Maybe some of you guys remember years ago this dude that started doing these street paintings, the big murals. One at Linwood and Troost, and there's one over on Prospect, and it kind of just came out of nowhere. And I remember people going, "What is this?" And is that his? I can't remember his name. Then he ended up getting work doing some murals downtown, and he kind of built up. I think he built kind of an art life out of it, from what I know about. And they're really black and white, interesting pieces, and they're hard to find. You have to know where they are. But he really brought a sense of pride to Linwood and Troost, which didn't have any at the time. I firmly believe, because I was working around there at the time, and so what you're doing is important. It's just so hard but you certainly can get attention for your other endeavors by keeping, to do that, because the press and people will pay attention to that if you make any kind of an impact. And there are a lot of resources out there. Every one of these little communities has a neighborhood association that's interested in that, and the police department and all the major stations has these officers who, CAN officers, Community Action Network, and has policemen who are involved, and they have the Police Athletic League, and they have all these, resources into those communities that mainly people don't go. And so those are resources that are available, and they're looking for things just like this to bring pride and give kids something to do. It's a huge problem right now.
Yeah, actually, we have no shortage of demand. Everyone wants us to come.
Right. Nobody wants to give you any money, do they? What does it cost? What does it cost to do one event, say at Linwood and Prospect at the?
I mean, okay, if we actually pay people for their time to come help us, we're talking about $500.
Okay.
And all told, last year we probably, part of this is because I actually did this in Copenhagen as well. I happened to be there for business, and so I said, let's try it in an actual kind of fairly decent art community. Not that this isn't, we actually have a great one, but like historically, artistic community. So we did it in Copenhagen, but our total cost for last year were something like $5,000 to $10,000. Mm-hmm. And part of that's because I'm so naive, but in the art happenings. But yeah, I mean, for $500, we can easily do, and we could probably get like 50 or 100 people to do it that night. We might be able to even do it cheaper, but I'm just trying to kind of round up so I don't get misquoted.
You know who does have money for these kinds of things, I believe, is the ATA, the bus people, because that's their population, and they've got bus stops all around there. So that's I understand I don't really know personally. I just know another guy that was trying to make a run on them for an art kind of a project that didn't want anything like this, but he indicated they had money. So
do we have
Thanks for the tip.
Yeah? Do we have one of the new people who want to ask a question or have a question they want to ask?
And I'm sorry for how unorganized I was in describing it. There's so much to say, so much I feel,
Okay, Paul.
I feel like I understood it.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yeah, and I don't want to hog the mic, but if no one else has a question, I'm happy to comment. And feel free, just raise your hand if something occurs to you and you want to add something to the dialogue here. But I do think you have rightfully identified a very important need, which is the fact in what you've referred to as renewal areas and what you've talked about as the urban core. There is, I'm lately, the lens I'm using in my own mind right now to think about this situation is that just as we are now very conscious of the digital divide, one of the consequences of that digital divide is what maybe you would call a creativity divide or an imagination divide, where if you are growing up in one of the less privileged neighborhoods in the Kansas City metro, you don't have access to some of the same, you're not surrounded with arts experiences and the potentially mind-opening benefits that growing up in an arts plentiful environment will bring to your own native imagination, your own native, skills of creativity. I do think that, and I do agree that this is really vitally important work. I'm not sure it actually takes a lot of money, as you rightfully identified, but it does take energy, it takes time, and it also takes the right attitude, and an attitude that is respectful, and one that the shorthand that I have learned after studying some of the artists and the funders who have led the way in these kinds of efforts is in thinking about participatory arts experiences. You want to use the shorthand that says, with, not for. You are showing up to work with people You honor them, you honor who they are, what their lives are like. You recognize that they are, human beings. You don't focus on what they don't have and on their drawbacks. And just as we now think not about disabled people, but people with disabilities, and put the emphasis on the human being, you meet these people where they are. You can't come in with an attitude that is at all condescending or sort of the I'm here to save you. It has to be very much about let's do this together. Mm-hmm. Let's do this as partners. And maybe you find funding within those communities, within the businesses that are involved in those communities, and that's hard because one of the issues is there aren't a lot of businesses in some of those areas, but there are people out there who have done this work successfully. There are models that you can find, and there are tools that will help you cultivate the right spirit to do this kind of work. You do have to get rid of any smattering of self-promotion, like, well, you're doing this to help your wife's sales and visibility. You need to think about this as a community benefit sort of a project if you want to go in that direction. Mm-hmm. You could use sponsorships from business, but it's not a for-profit model you're talking about.
So, I'm naive and you are an expert, so I at first tip my hat, but I just want to pose this, that the arts world has suffered from lack of exposure, money, and integration. And so I would propose that while I can't say that you're wrong because of my ignorances, it seems to me, and maybe this is a business person coming in who is now just defiling everything in what he's saying, that we need to be creative and step completely outside of the traditional molds and behaviors for bringing art to life and art to exposure into our culture.